I think it's very clear, and one of the purposes of your meetings, that independent journalism is a pillar of modern liberal democracies, and the relevant public service broadcaster is an important pillar of a functioning media ecosystem. And independently, privately financed journalism is under pressure. Public service broadcasting is under pressure, and also liberal democracies face tremendous challenges. And on the other hand side, we have the advance of illiberal democracies, the advance of economic successful but authoritarian state capitalism as in China, and the victory of fundamentalism like in Afghanistan. And all these things have ended the end of history, and social platform media erode the source of financing journalism and at the same time the credibility and usage of professional media. So all this will, for private media, be discussed during the sessions, also the session after my speech, and I will concentrate on the specific situation of the challenges for public service broadcasting in Austria and in Europe. At present, you said it, ORF is the most important source of information for the Austrian public, and according to the Reuters news report, the most trusted media and source of information in television, in radio, and online, and social media. So to defend these strengths and further develop all these our strengths, we have to address several very important issues. One, you mentioned it, is to safeguard and also increase the independence from the state and government interference in our bodies. You mentioned it, that of course if you are a public entity, then of course you have a supervisory board. It's a board of trustees consisting of 35 members at present here in ORF. And although this body is nominated, the members are nominated from different bodies, government, parliament, regional authorities, trade unions, and others. It has a mechanism which led to the fact, for the first time, one has to say, in this ORF history, so since decades, that one party, which has presently about 35% of the vote, the strongest party in Austria, in the public, has almost 2/3 of the votes directly and with persons directly or indirectly related and very closely related to them in the board. So, whereby in the past, ORF, it was always the case that not a single party, even when Social Democrats had the absolute majority in the parliament in the 70s and 80s, never had the full majority in the board due to these checks and balancings mechanisms. And this has changed. Don't want to go into that detail. So, but one has to think about in the future to set up a new form of checks and balances in the governing bodies. And you have that same question also in many other countries in Europe, but one can say the more diverse the governing bodies are constituted, also the better it is, of course, for the independence of the journalism and the journalistic work. But of course, it's not only a question of the governing bodies. It is also the question of the statutory standing of the journalists and the journalistic work. And we have a system in Austria which is good, that it's also guaranteed by the constitution of the country that our journalists can work independent and according to their journalistic way of working. And also we have quite strong mechanisms, a Redakteursstatut, statute of editorial working, which gives a lot of rights to the journalists, and this has to be further developed because this is also a measure of safeguarding and guaranteeing as much as possible independent reporting. The third, which is also important, is that, of course, we have a public funding. In the ORF case, it's 2/3 is public and 1/3 is advertising income. However, still we are under financial constraints, not as much maybe as private media at the moment, who are 100% dependent on commercial income. But we, of course, we have our constraints. So also as a safe and state-independent financing, independent from the state budget, like we have it with our license fee system, is important to guarantee the independence of reporting. Because if you have no money, you won't have the journalists, you won't have the means to train and educate the journalists and give them also a stable working relationship, then it will be difficult to maintain a strong independent reporting. So it's also a question, if you want to give independent position to public service broadcasting information, you have to guarantee a state budget independent system of financing, which is also sufficient to have the necessary number of journalists and also to safeguard or to guarantee the quality of the journalists and their working environment. What that means, for example, that we have the responsibility not to have only general journalists, but also have journalists trained and educated in special teams in fields like investigation or economics or science. That maybe was not so in the focus maybe the years ago, but the last years or 1.5 years we have seen during the pandemic that our teams of well-educated scientific journalists got the role of, Mr. Drosten said it yesterday in an interview, of being part of a critical infrastructure to serve the public in these very demanding times of the pandemic. And public service broadcasting should have and has the means, not enough, but has the means to have these journalistic teams. And this is a part, if you have well-trained journalists, it's also easier for them to maintain the independence in their work because they also have the knowledge. So, safe, sufficient, and state independence finance has to be safeguarded, is under pressure everywhere, and in all the countries where the license fee system was abolished, one saw that if as soon as you are dependent from the state budget and its mechanisms, also the money you get is reduced, and that means that journalistic quality and journalistic independence are also coming under pressure. Third, or next point is then to come to a very important conclusion. As I said, we reach about 90% of the population every day with our information in television, radio, online. We, different to maybe most other European countries besides the BBC, are also the strongest online property, Austrian online property, ORF Online. So we reach also the the digital audience. And we started mainly, or concentrating 2 years ago, our social media activities. And for example, have with our ZIP Insta, that's our primetime news show, the ZIP Insta account, now 760,000 followers. So by far the largest Austrian online or social media property. And we start next week or 2 weeks at ZIP TikTok. Because, as I said, you have to address the audience. You don't have it's not only necessary to have proper journalism, you only have the means to reach the audience where they are, in particular the younger ones. And therefore, in order to play our role as most trusted and most important source of information also in the future, we need a new legal framework which gives us the possibility also to apply the rules of the platform logics and the social media logics and combine them with our information. Because otherwise, maybe we will have independent and good quality journalism in linear television and radio, but not be able to reach the audience of the future in a proper way. So it's also a question of the independence and to safeguard the independence of public service reporting. If you provide us the possibilities to really reach the audience in the new ways. This requires also a new type of storytelling. It's not just a question to have the legal framework to be able to, in social media, or form a platform with platform logic and personalization, etc. We call it the OF player. It will also require our journalists to find new ways of telling their stories and presenting it to their audiences as soon as we are legally allowed to. In general, and I had 2 days ago, I was attending a high-level meeting of IPIWoCo, how to protect independent public service media in Europe. And we have developments in Hungary, in Poland, maybe starting in Slovenia, where the independence of the public service media is restricted, and also their financial abilities are also restricted, and their ways how to reach public audience are also restricted. And then if you have no audience, no way to reach it, no trust with the audience, then it starts a system of delegitimization of public service media and will lead to severe consequences. So I think in Austria we are far from the situations in the country I mentioned, but we discussed it even in Great Britain. If you look at the situation of the BBC right at the moment and how BBC is under attack from the present government, also the mother of public service broadcasting could come under severe pressure in the future. So I think also to safeguard and protect the independence of a strong public service media, it's not just a question of the national level, but also on the European level, and also to support initiatives by the European Commission and the Parliament to try to set rules for the necessary independence of independent reporting by public service media. So at least some remarks to this very important issue. Thank you, and I'm available for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, if there are any questions in the room, maybe I will start with the first one. Mr. Wrabetz, you recently had elections at the ORF, and the top positions have changed. all the directors. Next year we will have new directors. We will have a new director general. What does it mean for the ORF?
We will see. No, but I think there are some things. Of course, there is a change on the top, and this change on the top, according to our system, also means that the new elected Director General has the possibility to also change a new team on the next level. Due to the quite intense discussion about our ORF election, which is maybe watched more closely than in most other countries, because I don't know, even in Germany, you don't have a big public debate on how ZDF or ARD should elect their directors. In Austria, it's different. It's also a consequence of the strong position we have in the country. But as a result of this quite intense discussion, and finally, also for our newly elected director, my successor, it was clear that he's coming from the ORF, so it's not imported from, I don't know, outside. And he is an ORF person since 25 years. And so he also knew the necessity of having a good quality journalism. And and also the team, which was elected yesterday, the team of directors are people who I would say are 100% within the scope and reach of a public service broadcaster. And the new radio director, Ingrid Thurnherr, she's not coming from the radio, but she's really a very prominent and a quality journalist. So I think it was maybe the expectations, some of those who elected this new team will be difficult to be fulfilled from their point of view. And there will be maybe then discussions in the future. And on the other hand side, we have, as I said, a quite strong statutory position of our journalists. And I'm also convinced that in case there would be a pressure on diminishing the journalistic rights and the freedom of our reporting, there would be an internal debate and then a public debate. So I think it's open how it will develop, but I'm quite sure that those who are elected will do their best to go on with the principles of independent reporting as we did.
Thank you. We have one more question here, and Maya.
Hello, my name is Maya Sever. I'm from Croatia. You said that you spoke with your colleagues from UBU about public services and the importance of public services, and I think that we all agree that it is very important for our society. But can you tell me the basic of directions of this fight? What is the idea? How we will survive? How we will protect public services in Europe and in our countries?
Yeah, it is a struggle which is going on for quite some time, and will never be over, I think, because the media environment is changing, the political environment is changing even faster. And I just now resuming a little bit the last 15 years where I was in this position. And there were several times where actually the government wanted to diminish our role, to cut our finances, and in the period only 2 years ago of the government, when the Freedom Party, the right-wing populist Freedom Party, was in the government, it was really very, very close to a situation where ORF, as we know it and people want it, would not have been possible to continue. Yes, maybe due to our also resistance and also maneuvering, at least we could delay that some measures to cut the financing of ORF and also splitting ORF in several parts and privatizing big parts of it did not come into reality to a certain degree, also because of a video maybe some of you have heard about. But you won't have all the time videos all over Europe. Yeah? So it's very, this Ibiza video I was mentioning, which led to the end of this very anti-ORF government. And now we have a slightly better situation because now the Greens, they are pro public service, although maybe not everything what they think public service is or should be, I would agree to, but it's at least in principle that they are on the side. And so this will be, and all over Europe, I think the problem is, we were discussing this the day before yesterday at this conference, that the political composition of a government has more influence on the sorry, it's not a politician, so the composition of a government in a certain country could lead to a quite immediate effect on how public service is run and can fulfill its tasks. Whereby in the decades after World War II, when the public service system was implemented all over Europe, even if the government changed, you did not put into question the existence and the scope of work of the public service media. This is changing, even in countries like Sweden, for example, which is a stronghold of democracy, stronghold of liberalism, stronghold of strong public service media. The colleagues told us that in the upcoming election in a few weeks, 3 parties could form a government together if they change the government from the present situation, would go more in the direction of a Hungarian and Slovenian model, than maintaining their existing model. And that means that it is even more challenging for all of us to have strong support by the public, by our audience, and have a good ways to also to motivate potential allies that political changes in a certain government could not lead to irreversible damage to the public service media. This is what has changed in the last years.
And maybe if there are any more questions, otherwise I have one. Otherwise I have one more. Picking up on what you just said, throughout the conference the past 2 days, we have heard from many journalists, editors operating in countries where the economic situation is difficult for a number of reasons, media capture and all of that, and they have to rely on audiences. They need to create communities of support among their audiences, and they work hard in order to make sure that this is there, because this is what these communities is what will keep them alive. Is the ORF going in that direction, and has it been successful? Is the ORF doing enough to motivate their audiences to support it?
can never be enough. Yeah? But when I was in this situation these 3 years ago, when the Freedom Party wanted to go the Danish way at that time, go to state finance, reduce the finance by 20%, and splitting off important pieces of the public service media. Then we tried to follow the Swiss way, and I think this is what the SAG, the Swiss public broadcaster, did when they had their Volksabstimmung about the future of the SAG and the license fee system. They were able to mobilize the people from the fields of culture, but also sports. Yeah, is something. There are so many areas where it's really important in a small country like Austria that ORF can fulfill its role. Also, of course, we are the only ones, and maybe some will also not fully agree to it, but also ORF has an important role in informing on the regional level. And the regional level, at least in television, of course in newspapers and online, there are strong players, but not in the field of television. So also we play a role for our regions, and then you can have also some support on the audience side, but also on the political sides from the regions which have a different attitude than central governments might have. So you all need all this. And then we will have maybe this, in Austria we will have a discussion also that our online services are to a too high degree text-based, which is always a discussion with the publishers. An understandable discussion with the publishers, because they have also their problems with financing their programs. And there is a discussion that it could end that our online platform, ORF Online, could be reduced or text-based information could be forbidden, which would mean the immediate end of Austria's largest online platform, 1.2 million daily users. So I would think in such a case, the audience would not accept this, and you would have to inform the public about this. If this is going, some limitations is always to be discussed, but if it's really ruining this most important online property, which is also not the most liked platform by some of the politicians, could lead to a public discussion, and then public discussion helps.
My name is Johannes Arno, German television, ZDF. We are public broadcasters as well, and I know what you're talking about. So my question is from your perspective, who is the most dangerous enemy of public broadcasting? And it's so, for me, it's always very difficult to understand. We have the highest ratings at the moment during the pandemic. We are the most trusted source of information, but still the attacks are growing every day, and we are defending ourselves all the time. Should we, as public service media, defend ourselves more strongly and counter these attacks who are waged against us? And how should we do this? So, the most dangerous enemy, and how should we confront it?
No. Yeah, the most dangerous enemy is a moving target, because normally you would just say it is the right-wing populists. They don't like us nowhere. This is for sure. But it changes. For example, as I said, in Great Britain, the Tories, they never really liked the BBC, but respected it. And now some backbenchers there maybe do an even bigger threat on the BBC than maybe parties in smaller countries, because it's clear that I'm 100% convinced if the public service system would start being destroyed in the big countries, it's Germany with ARD and ZDF, and the BBC, etc., then it would have an effect on all of us, yeah? On all of us. So it's moving. Or, for example, also in Austria, we have a very small, very liberal, also social liberal party, so to say, the Neos, and they have positions which would, in case they would execute this, would also ruin us with other arguments and from another angle, because they, from a free market angle, say who needs a public broadcaster in case where everything can be done on social media, etc. So therefore we have to be very careful, look for the discussion about our role even in times where it seems to be quiet. And as I said, what to do, I think, and this is the question, of course, and the problem, if we always go into, I would say, a very aggressive way of counter-attacking, then I think that's also not always the best way to do it. And because also your Intendanten, of course, they speak out quite openly also their positions. But on the other hand side, they also have to try to find ways to convince your 16 regional parliaments for everything which is needed for. So it has to be both, to speak out, to discuss, and but not to mobilize in every day in our own purpose, so to say.
If this is possible. I said that we are under attack, and we discussed it with the colleagues all the time, and the attacks coming online, they're coming very fast, they're coming quickly. So how can we somehow, from your point of view and from your experience, how can we react on this very fast developing online attacks, which are, if they are out, it's very difficult to somehow get them back and counter them. Do we need some more, let's say, special group of social media journalists countering these attacks?
First of all, we have to be strong in social media with our normal reporting, because only if the people who are the youngs who are using the social media every day, if they also understand that we are a trusted source there for them, then it's also easier to get in discussion if if we discuss on our own and about ourselves. And secondly, it brings a lot of problem for the management, but we have certain persons in Austria, in ORF, like Armin Wolf or Mr. Kappacher, which are very strong personalities, not always easy. But they also they go into the discussions. Yeah? So if you have testimonials, people who are respected, also do not dare they go in an open discussion with the audience. I think this is a way you cannot organize, because if as soon as they would be seen as being part of our PR strategy, then they would not have this role. So I think you have to accept, and this was also one of the reasons my contract was not extended, that our people are, as a person, discussing in the field of social media, and that helps.
Mr. Wrabetz, thank you so much. I know you have to catch a flight, but thank you so much for being with us today and for helping us understand what's happening at ORF.
Thank you.